Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark of the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1983 French drama Sugarcane Alley.
Faites votre travail, faites-le convenablement. Commandeur, tout va.
Hey, well, I'm doing the best I can here. I'm reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at 1983 with Sugarcane Alley. This movie has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and an 80% fresh rating from the audience. And just a side note, I am still a little sick, so please pardon my voice. So this movie was a refreshing movie. I thought it was actually very good. I've never heard of it before. When I first started watching it, the cinematography is a little rough. It does show its age a little bit. It's definitely not as polished as, like, say, The Terminator, which I just reviewed. But as I said in The Terminator, there's no movie so far in this era that has those kind of polished CGI graphics. This is just a regular, nice movie. It's got really good acting in it. It's just kind of a feel-good movie is what it is, and it really took me by surprise. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it would be. I've seen movies like this where they start off as kind of uplifting, and then at the end of the movie, it really just does a complete 180 and just leaves you sad and depressed. But luckily that was not this movie. So what this movie is about is there is a main character named Jose, I believe is how his name is pronounced, and he lives with his grandmother because his parents passed away. Now he is young, he is a young child, and he gets into a lot of mischief with his friends. There's a scene where they end up lighting, like, some guy's house on fire. And their parents, so Jose's grandparents, his grandmother who he lives with, and the parents of all the other children, they are African American. This is in France, and they work in a sugarcane field, essentially, and they are treated terribly. They are underpaid. They are beaten constantly by the white landowners who they work for, and they are just treated terribly.
18 francs, 2 sous.
Comment dire? C'est tout?
Ça ou encore?
Yo payé pour ça au fait.
Pour tout ce qu'il a pété, c'est ça seulement vous lui donnez alors.
Madame, 18 francs.
Mais vous savez bien qu'il nous met jamais pu faire ça devant le canne en 6 jours.
C'était trop long. Et le roi, tu l'as refusé.
Cette femme va toujours pouvoir aller voir hier.
L'autre connaît le critère baptisé carité comme ça.
Allez, suivant.
Now, Jose, his grandmother is worried that he's going to fall into the same type of lifestyle that she lives, where he is also going to live and work and die in the sugarcane field, and she doesn't want that for him, so she constantly pushes him going to school and gaining an education. Now he has a friend named Meduse, who is a elderly gentleman who also works the field, who tells him stories of Africa and tells him stories about how the white man forced them to come over to these lands and work the sugarcane fields, and basically tells him how this life that they are forced to live was thrown upon them, and it's not something that they wanted, but here they are.
J'avais un grand frère, Ousmane, et une petite sœur, Sorna. Les hommes blancs nous ont chassés, attrapés avec des lassos. Et puis, après des jours et des jours, à travers la brousse, ils nous ont amenés au bord de la grande eau. Et puis un jour, on nous a débarqués ici, on nous a vendus pour couper la canne de ces blancs qu'on appelle béquets.
Essentially. So she pushes education, she pushes school on him. There's a scene where one of the white landowners even says, like, your grandma thinks you're going to be this great person one day, but it's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to be anything, essentially. So towards the end of the movie, the middle of the movie, we learn that he's actually a very good student. Jose is a very good student. He ends up getting a partial scholarship to go to Fort de France, which is like the college in the main city. And he obviously takes them up on this offer. Him and his grandma go to the school to kind of get the books and get the money from the scholarship, and they learn that it's only a partial scholarship. They thought it was a full scholarship, and it's only going to pay for a fourth of his education, so they have to come up with the rest of the money. Now the grandma doesn't know how she's going to make this happen, but she's determined to make it happen because she's determined that Jose is not going to live in the same situation that she lives in. So she leaves the sugarcane fields. Oh, also, sorry, Meduse ends up passing away earlier in the movie, which is kind of a shock to Jose, and it leaves him very depressed and sad. They end up moving away from the sugarcane fields, where she takes up a job, I think, as like a, sort of like a maid to another person, while she tries to make up the money needed to have Jose go to school. So Jose goes to school. He takes up a job as well with someone, so he is late to school every now and then, and he appears that he's falling behind on his studies, but he is asked by his professor to recite something, and he recites it very eloquently and very well, and his professor is very very impressed by what he does.
Monsieur Hassan, dites-nous donc quelle différence de sens il y a entre caqueter et chanter.
En général, on emploie le mot chanter pour les personnes lorsque leur voix exprime une musique. Par exemple, ma grand-mère avec une bonne pipe, elle aime bien chanter.
He ends up writing a paper for school as well, and the paper he writes, the professor reads it in front of class, and it's very high above what everyone else is able to write. His level of education and his level of understanding of the world, and his ability to put his thoughts on paper is well ahead of everyone else, and so much so that the professor thinks he's cheated on this paper, and he calls him out and says, like, you cheated on this. Jose says that definitely did not happen. I didn't cheat. He runs out of the class upset, and then eventually the teacher comes back and apologizes to him and says, I was mistaken. You didn't cheat on this paper. You did a very good job. Jose's grandmother throughout the entire movie is not well. She's sick. She has a lot of heart issues. She ends up passing away at the end of the movie. And one of Jose's friends, we see him in the town where he's uncovered some sort of corruption, and he's being punished for it. And it's kind of like the dichotomy of where his friends are in life now and where he is in life, and how he could have suffered kind of the same fate that his friends are suffering had he not stayed down the path that he was following. And that's basically the entire movie. It really kind of champions education. It champions perseverance. It champions, continuing in life when you think that there's no hope. and it really leaves you at the end of the movie feeling hopeful about life, feeling hopeful about things. It leaves you with this idea that you can accomplish anything. It almost makes me feel how every time I watch Almost Famous, I feel like I can just take on the world after the end of that movie. And this is kind of the feeling that you get at the end of this movie. Like, this was someone who definitely, he grew up poor. He had the hardest life anyone could think of having. But because he had a grandmother who was so insistent on him doing better for himself, because he had that support system where she refused to allow him to have the same kind of hard, difficult, laborsome life that she had. She was determined for him to do better, and he in turn had that same determination, and it really set him up for the rest of his life. And I think it's a really good story, and I think it really shows how impactful adults around you can be when you're a child, and how impactful they are as role models. When I was young, my parents were very laissez-faire about school. You can go to school if you want. You don't have to go to school. It's not a big deal. And I think for a long time I lacked that drive. And it wasn't until I was older that I understood the importance of education, and I got my education a lot later in life than most people would have, because I had to develop that drive myself. And it's much harder when you have to do it yourself. It's much harder when your parents really are not as interested as you are. It's harder. It's a lot harder, and a lot of people never develop that drive and that sense of urgency to get an education. And I think that it's done me very well in life. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. I would never take my education back. I would never do it any differently. And Jose in this movie is very lucky for that upbringing. And I think it's just a very good story. It has a very good moral to the story. The acting all around is really good. The script is really good. The only issue I have is that it does look dated, but that just could be the copy that I was able to find to watch. They're not always the greatest as in terms of quality, but I'm doing the best I can with what I can find. But yeah, it's a little gem of a movie. It's kind of like the diamond in the rough that you probably have never heard of. And it's quite good. It's pretty much everything that you would want in a drama. It's everything that you would want in kind of an uplifting, feel-good movie. Even though it doesn't start off that way, it starts off very rough, the type of life that he had. But it ends up becoming blossoming just like him, where he started off rough. He ended up blossoming into something bigger and better, and that's what it ends up doing. I like this movie a lot, and I give it a 9 out of 10. Thank you. I hope you join me for my next review, which is going to be a movie called Threads. Have a great day.